Joined now by former Vancouver Canuck TSN hockey analyst Frankie Corrado, who I'm sure took in the Vancouver Canucks and their thrilling 2-1 victory over the Arizona Coyotes, and noticed that the Dallas Stars thumped Edmonton
Yeah.
5-0. So a 7-point gap. They've got two in hand, the Oilers do, and a head-to-head. But what do you think, Frankie? Is this done and dusted, or the Vancouver Canucks going to win the Pacific Division?
Yeah, I feel like they're going to win the division, and they deserve to. Like from start to finish so far this season, they've been the best team in that division. There's been a number of stories that have emerged here, whether it's Rick Tocchet getting the most out of the group, the star players really leading the charge, depth players like that. There was a point in time where the third line for the team was one of the best lines in the NHL. Management deserves a ton of credit for the way they've been able to bolster the blue line. So you add all those things up, and you have, the Edmonton Oilers, who really were spinning their wheels out of the gate. Vancouver took full advantage of that, and the division is theirs. The Pacific Division belongs to the Vancouver Canucks, and that is, it's a feather in the cap of a lot of people there. It's recognition for a lot of hard work, executed very, very well, and very well deserved for everyone involved.
And that's great that they've been able to maintain this. And again, it's not math yet. It's not done, but it's looking very good. But does the how matter? How they are finishing this off at this point in the season? They got the win last night. You get those 2 points. But man, not the easiest.
Narrow victory. Haven't beaten a playoff team in almost a month.
Not exactly a Mona Lisa of finishing. I mean, they dominated the game in a lot of ways, and yet they didn't look like they were overwhelming the Coyotes in a lot of ways as well.
The how is going to matter. And, you can talk about great stretches of hockey that the team has had. Go back to earlier in the season. It felt like they couldn't lose, they couldn't miss, all that kind of stuff. It kind of gets thrown out the window come playoff time. It matters how you're playing right now going down the stretch here. And a good example of that would be the Florida Panthers from last year. Like, they were playing really desperate, really hungry hockey for the last, I don't know, couple weeks to a month at least. They finally get into the playoffs in the last day of the regular season, and they go on this run. There was no load management. There was no talk about, we're going to rest this guy, we're going to rest that guy. It was, we need to do everything we possibly can to get into the playoffs, and that really carried over into their game. Now, with that being said, I think, we're trying to look back and see, what have we learned about the Canucks this season? There's a few things that really stick out. When the offense is cooking, they're a very dangerous team. One of the things that's been very constant with the team is that they can be very difficult to play against. They can be physical. So knowing that and seeing that for larger sample sizes this year, when the calendar flips and all of a sudden we're talking about the playoffs, that's there and that's available. Now it's just up to the group to channel that. And I would say that these last few games of the regular season, whatever we have left, is it 6 or 7? It's like, it is a little bit of a weird time because you know where you're going. You don't necessarily know exactly who you're playing, but at some point here, you're going to have to find that full intensity level. And given what we've seen from the team this season, I would be fairly confident that they can find it when the time really matters, and that's going to be April 20th or whenever the playoffs do open up.
Yeah. It's a subconscious thing, right? Like, the athletes can't flip the switch early. Like, coaches implore them, do it now. It's harder to do in game one, and yet they can't. They can't say, I'm going to bring playoff intensity tonight. We know they do in game one, but yeah.
Right? Like, if it's not the playoffs, it's not the playoffs. It's hard. You're playing a back-to-back. Like, they play a back-to-back against
You can take
Vegas.
the reservation, but it's about keeping the reservation, right?
Anyone can just take a reservation. Yeah. Like, okay, so they're playing a back-to-back. They play in Vegas. Doesn't go their way. It's not a very good game. That's fine. But at least you go into Arizona, a team that, they lost a million games in a row earlier in the season, it felt like. But they give you a good game. Like, they're not an easy out. So in that situation, they play a solid game. Quinn Hughes really led the charge last night. Seelov was really good. But there's that bounce back. There's that bounce back performance that you're kind of looking for in that situation. And so there's another, checked box where it's like, those situations are going to arise where you don't have a good night in the playoffs. How do you bounce back, the day after tomorrow? And, that's just a little bit of a glimpse maybe to how the team can bounce back, even though Arizona is an inferior opponent that's not going to make the playoffs. And, like you guys pointed out, wins have been easy to come by against those kinds of teams, not as easy to come by against really good teams. But the same can be said for the Edmonton Oilers right now. It seems like when they play an inferior opponent, it's point night. They look great defensively. Goaltender looks good. Depth scoring is there. What happened when they played the Dallas Stars last night? It was, shades of a lot of the other issues that have plagued that team in the past. So I would say it's not just the Vancouver Canucks that have had that pop up into their narrative at this point in the season.
If you were the Canucks, Frankie, who would you want in the first round? Vegas, LA, or Nashville?
Yeah, this is the question everyone seems to be asking, and who's got?
And let me just, like, I'm not the who do you want? We want so and so. Like the cocky fan base. Who do you want? Who would you prefer in terms of a matchup stylistically for the Canucks?
I probably want the Nashville Predators, and that's no slight to Nashville. What that is more of the style of game that Nashville is going to play. They forecheck hard. They play an up-tempo kind of game, but that means it's going to be an up-tempo type of game both ways. And I think when you play against LA, you can really see how they slow things down to their pace. They really get you in the mud in the neutral zone. And it seems like it's hard for Vancouver's, their star players at least, to get a little bit of space, to generate anything off the rush, to turn rush chances into cycle chances, into offensive zone play. So with all that being said, I know there's going to be a goaltender X factor there, but at the style of game that Nashville plays, where it's gonna have a lot of pace, it's going to be giddy up and go kind of hockey. I think that's better for the Vancouver Canucks than this, slow kind of slog kind of game that the LA Kings seem to try and get teams to play in.
Yeah.
Canucks are 3-0 against Nashville this year, 5-2, 3-2, and 5-2. Of course, they haven't played since December 19th.
And Nashville's found themselves.
Well, that was before that Nashville went on punishment, missed the U2 concert, and decided we were going to be the best team in the league.
You have to think, if it wasn't U2, like if it was a different band, would we have a different result? Like I'm trying to think if there's, what other bands out there that have that kind of magnitude that,
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, because that was quite a punishment, right? Like you were just taking away a concert you were, excited for. Like this, as you said, generational concert here. U2 at the Sphere.
Yeah, no offense. It's not Billy Currington at Bridgestone Arena. Like you could see Billy any night on Broadway. Mm-hmm. It's U2 at the Sphere, man. I don't know.
How about Dead and Company? Dead and Company's going to play the Sphere. They're who? Dead and Company. I think it's the lone remnant of the Grateful Dead, surrounded by John Mayer and a bunch of other guys.
Are you a Deadhead? Is that
no, I'm not. But I'm 1 degree away from a lot of Deadheads, so I'm up to speed on Dead and Company.
Okay. Does that mean you do acid with Deadheads?
No, it means I know Deadheads that do acid.
See, that's that one step away. Once he does acid with them, then he's fully in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
More of a microdoser.
Right. We'll connect you with Bill Walton next time we're down in California. Okay, so you want Nashville. Answer me the poll. Who's the club MVP here? JT Miller, Quinn Hughes? Feel free to go off the board.
It's Quinn Hughes. It's Quinn Hughes for me. I really do believe he's going to win the Norris Trophy this season, although you can make a very compelling case for Roman Josi now that Nashville has really come on strong in the latter parts of the season. You'll always be able to make a strong case for Cale Makar. But Quinn Hughes is the best defenseman in the NHL this year. He's meant the most to his team outside of probably Roman Josi. Like that's where the argument for Josi really comes into play. And the way he's kind of elevated his game and took his game to another level, it's very impressive. JT Miller has done that as well, though. Like JT Miller has come back this season and really relished the role that he's been playing. I thought it was incredible that JT Miller goes and drops the gloves 2 nights ago, right after Pettersson gets hit. It's like, I don't know. It screams leadership to me. And the way he did that without taking the instigator was perfect. Like that's how you do it. You go up to the guy, you challenge him, you shake your gloves, you kind of force him to call your bluff, let's say, and get him involved in that altercation. I thought that was really well done. There's probably not a wrong answer to this, but my answer is going to be Quinn Hughes. The amount of ways he affects the game and the way he always seems to have the puck on his stick, just so much needs to go through him for this team to be successful. And if you were to take Quinn Hughes out of the lineup, I think this team's game would look very different. I think it would look more different if you took Hughes out of the lineup than if you took Miller out of the lineup. But I think that speaks more to Hughes's brilliance this year.
How many votes does he get for the Hart, do you think, Quinn Hughes?
Ooh, first place votes. I don't think he gets any first place votes.
No.
I just think it's too crowded. Like it's going to be a legit probably 4-person race. If Matthews touches 70, like he's going to get first place votes, whether people in Vancouver want to hear that or not.
And defensemen have been left off the ballot here. Like they don't get the Hart votes anymore. They just don't.
Well, you've got 3 players at 126 points or greater and counting here.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been a pretty extraordinary
90-point
season.
defensemen are pretty rare too, though.
No, totally get it. And we had this discussion the last couple of years with Roman Josi and Erik Karlsson. But Kucherov, McKinnon, and McDavid and how they've carried their team. And then, as Frank says, with Matthews potentially going for 70 goals, that's I think he's going to get 4th and 5th place votes. I agree with Frank. Yeah. I don't think he's going to get. I don't think he's going to get any first place votes. I forget if we asked you about this last week. I don't think we did, but he's now playing the game at a level, Frank, where he had a comment after a game last week that he has to be very calculated in terms of when he decides to take the puck and rush up ice, or when he decides to pinch off the point and try and create something offensively in the half court, because he's got to be able to conserve energy. And he was talking about how he needs to read situations where teammates have gotten inside. Like the hockey IQ here is now on a different level. He's playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers.
Yeah, it's interesting that he talks about that, because when you watch him play, you would just think it's go time every time, because it seemingly is, right? Every time in the offensive zone, he'll get involved. He'll activate off the blue line. In the neutral zone, he'll throw a fake one-way spin off you the other way, and then he's carrying the puck up. But it's interesting to hear him, have those comments, because in order to do that at the quality rate at which he does it, the quantity rate probably needs to drop a little bit. Like if you're going to try and do that every time you have the puck on your stick, you're going to fizzle out within the game and then from game to game.
I think that about him all the time. I think, right? How do you have the energy to keep doing this?
Yeah, quality touches over quantity of touches really makes a difference. And I don't know, you look back at some of the best defensemen that have ever played the game. I'll think of one who plays different than Quinn Hughes, obviously. Nick Lidstrom. Nick Lidstrom did the simplest things incredibly well. Like just so simple, but so well. And then every once in a while, there was that flash of brilliance. And you're like, whoa, that really that caught your eye, let's say. And I think that's the same for Quinn Hughes in a different style, because he's a little more loud on the ice. Obviously, the skating is a little more bold and creative, all that kind of stuff. But watch him play. It's like, there's a few simple plays that he makes, and you're like, okay, that's just, that's to use the baseball term. I think Botchford using it. It was like, that's a single, that's another single. All of a sudden, there's your home run play. And, we've seen that home run play quite a bit here from him. And last night included in that, and even against Vegas the other night. Adding
a skill, though, too, while you're a pro, like seeing last year, I want to be a better shooter, and becoming a better shooter and scoring goal. Like, that's not easy to do either. We talked about Bo Horvat improving his skating forever and ever, and it's just adding skill while you're a pro after you've turned. I mean, it's hard to do, as you can imagine.
There's honestly two things there. Like, you can work with someone like these shot doctor guys that really just work on shooting. There's a few of these guys around the league that guys go and see. The other thing is the sticks now are so responsive to you. So if you're a guy who was, maybe not the strongest guy, didn't maybe lean on your stick as much, and you were using an 80 flex stick, all of a sudden your coach comes to you and says, we want you to shoot the puck a little bit more. We want you to hit the one-timer a little bit more. You go to Bauer or CCM or whoever your stick manufacturer is, and you say, I need a little less whip on this stick. I need a little bit of a different kick point because I'm going to try this shot a little more this season because coaching staff has identified, hey, you can hit this one timer way more than you actually do, but you don't feel comfortable doing it. So you give your tool a better opportunity to actually hit that shot. And I don't know if that's happened, but that's one of those things where it's like that's part of the equation as well. So it is working on your craft. It's also giving yourself a better opportunity with the stick that you have.
Last question here. Ever involved in a line brawl?
Oh, buddy, you know what? I would have been if my gloves weren't sewn on. I think that was part of the deal. When I got to each team, I asked the trainer, "Can you just sew them on for me so they don't come off?" I I was, I was involved in a weird little altercation in Utica once, playing in the minors. We were playing in Binghamton, and it was a pretty simple play. Like I just kind of boxed out a guy, simple cross check, and he really got pissed off at me. And so now he's going back and forth. He's like, I'm gonna mess you up, whatever. Like there's some threats going my way.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, okay, I'm going to be a little shit disturber. And I guess I'll tell him he's going to the East Coast Hockey League next year. And that didn't go over very well. And he says, I'm going to jump you. I'm like, okay, just do it. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to jump me. So he ended up jumping me. And, all kinds of guys jumped in after. It was, I don't know. I think that's the closest thing I ever came to a line brawl in pro hockey.
No
I
pro
remember
fights?
in
Do
junior-
you have pro fights?
I have pro jumpings. That's one of them. The other one was also in Utica. My D partner, I think it was Johnny Negrin, good Vancouver guy. He got hit from behind, and it was one of the Cody Beach, maybe one of maybe I don't know. Someone's whose last name was Beach.
Yeah,
and
Chris? Yep.
maybe Chris. And I went up to him. I was 20. I'm gonna cross check him. And his gloves were off before I could even get the cross check on his body. And next thing you know, I'm like, oh man, I should have been more prepared for that. So I showed up to that fight late as well. Yeah.
You never want to be late.
So
I was late. I was late to a lot of fights in my
late
life.
to a lot of fights. Well, and the other thing is, who could want to fight you? Is that the honor code? You have to tell the guy before you're going to jump him. That is quite noble. I'm going to jump you.
At least I had notice, right? And
the sucker punch is less suckery when you say, "I'm going to sucker punch you."
I actually think Markstrom was playing that game, and he loves an altercation like that. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure
We
flying,
know.
he came flying down the ice, and he had the blocker going. Hey man, you know what? It's a Wednesday night in Binghamton, New York. Anything goes.
That's
right.
right.
And as we, Jake's got a little bit of that wild man streak to him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
If
fiery
you
temper.
if you bait it enough, you're gonna see it, and he will throw hands. If
we had one in junior. Actually, we had a line brawl in junior. It was game 4 of our playoff series against the Barrie Colts. And how's this for a left side of the ice? Okay, let's see if you guys are familiar with any of these names, which you will be for sure. They were an older team. They were going for the championship. They ended up losing to Windsor in the finals that year. Their left wingers were Darren Archibald, Stefan Della Rovere, Kyle Clifford, and Zach Ronaldo. And I was 16 years old.
Oh my
and
God.
those animals
pugnacious
were skating around the ice.
Yeah.
And we had a line brawl with
NHL
them.
the next year.
Yes, yeah. Clifford was in the NHL the next
as a
year.
19-year-old.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And so we had a line brawl with them. And I remember my D partner, who was also 16 years old, but he was built like he was from Thunder Bay, 6'4", 225. He went Kyle Clifford. And that was wild. I was not
what happens in a line brawl
Wise.
if everybody starts to pair off and you're the pacifist at the end there who really doesn't want to fight? Like, are you allowed to abstain? Like 4 guys have paired off. What if you're the last guy and you're looking at the one guy that's there? Do you just say, I'm not interested? Like, is that possible, or do you pay for it for the rest of your career?
I think what has to happen here is a little something called cutting a deal. And this is
You grab each other's jerseys and watch.
It's a little bit of it's theatrical, right?
Right,
We're not the
dancing.
main event. We're like the under card, and it's like, hey, we're just gonna grab each other. Nothing like we know what this is all about. We're just we just got to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's you cut a little deal. There's a mutual understanding. You have to hope though that the other person, Blake, is in the same situation.
Right.
As
He
you.
might want to go.
Mhm.
He might want to go.
You could look across there and it's some guy who's got the look on his face of a pit bull and he's going to eat your face off. You're like, oh man, get the stretcher, get the dark room ready.
So good. So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Frank. We are a lot richer with knowledge in terms of the code, the etiquettes, and the mechanics
Yes.
of the line brawl. Appreciate
All right,
that,
boys.
sir.
Yeah,
Thanks.
see ya. Thanks.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.